A teenage girl, a village so small and obscure that historians spend decades doubting it existed in the first century. No throne, no wealth, no soldiers protecting her. Yet today, two of the largest religions on earth, Christianity and Islam, both call her the greatest woman who ever lived. In the Quran, an entire chapter carries her name, a distinction no other woman receives. But the polished version of her story you've heard in sermons and paintings leaves out the parts that make her remarkable. Stay with me, because near the end I'll show you how recent digs in Israel are physically confirming pieces of her world once dismissed as legend. Hit subscribe right now, because the middle of this video covers details about her life that rarely make it into any sermon, and you will not want to miss it. The girl behind the name. Her actual name was Maryam, and Maryam and Mary are simply different translations of it. She grew up in Nazareth, a town so minor that for generations skeptics assumed the gospel writers had invented it, since no records outside Scripture confirmed it existed. It had no marketplace worth mentioning, no political weight, nothing. It was the kind of place people escaped from, not the kind of place history expected greatness from. That contrast is the entire point. In both Christian and Islamic tradition, her story opens before her birth, with her mother making a vow to dedicate her completely to God. In the Quran, that mother is named Hannah. This one act of devotion sets everything else in motion. A childhood spent inside the temple. This next part rarely gets mentioned outside specific religious circles. According to Islamic tradition, Maryam wasn't raised in an ordinary household. She grew up inside the temple, under the care of the prophet Zechariah. The Quran records something strange, that whenever Zechariah visited her chamber, he found food there with no earthly source. When he asked how it got there, she told him it came directly from God. Think about what that implies. This isn't a girl passively waiting for her story to begin. This is a child already in direct contact with the divine. Early Christian texts outside the Bible, like the Proto-Evangelium of James, describe a nearly identical upbringing, a girl raised apart from everyone inside sacred space. The announcement that changed history. Then the moment arrives. An angel appears to her privately and tells her she will carry a child, with no husband, no precedent, in a society where this alone could destroy her. What often gets smoothed over is her actual reaction. She didn't simply accept it. She questioned it. In the Quran, she asks how this could happen when no man has touched her. In Luke's Gospel, she asks nearly the same question. This wasn't quiet submission. This was a young woman challenging an impossible claim before she agreed to it. That single detail reframes her entire character, not as someone passive, but as someone who reasoned first and trusted second. The part every sermon skips. Here is where most retellings lose their nerve. Being unmarried and pregnant in first century, Judea wasn't just awkward. Under certain readings of the law, it could carry a death sentence. The Quran describes her fleeing to an isolated location and giving birth alone beneath a palm tree, in what the text describes as genuine agony, crying out that she wished she'd died before this moment and disappeared entirely. That is an extraordinarily raw line to find inside Scripture. Forget the calm, untouchable figure from stained glass windows. This is a frightened young woman, isolated, in pain, convinced her own community might kill her once she returned. Vindicated by her own child. When she finally walks back into her community holding an infant, the accusations come immediately. According to Islamic tradition, she doesn't argue back. She simply gestures toward the baby, and the infant Isa speaks in the cradle, declaring his own prophethood and clearing his mother's name in front of everyone. Regardless of how you interpret that moment theologically, the storytelling weight is undeniable. She's proven innocent not through her own defense, but through the very child she was condemned for. It's one of the most striking reversals in religious storytelling, and most people have never heard it. Where archaeology is catching up. For years, critics pointed to the lack of physical evidence for locations tied to this story, especially Nazareth and Bethlehem. That gap has been closing fast. Archaeologists working in Nazareth uncovered first-century homes, stone vessels, and burial sites, confirming it really was a small Jewish farming village, exactly when the Gospels place her there. In Jerusalem, researchers found a small clay seal dating to the 8th century BC bearing the word Bethlehem. the earliest evidence outside Scripture the town existed at all. And near Megiddo, archaeologists uncovered mosaic floor roughly 1,800 years old, containing early Christian symbols and one of the oldest known inscriptions referencing Jesus Christ ever discovered. None of this proves every supernatural claim in her story, but it proves the world she supposedly lived in was real, not invented centuries later. The quiet ending no one talks about. After the crucifixion, something strange happens to her story. It goes almost completely silent. Christian tradition fills that gap with a specific location, a small stone house on a hillside near ancient Ephesus, in what is now Turkey, believed to be where she lived her final years under the Apostle John's protection. People still travel there. It's a strangely quiet ending for a life that began with angels and public scandal. But maybe that's exactly right. Maybe the most remarkable thing about her isn't the miracles at all. It's that after surviving everything, she simply lived out an ordinary life in a small, forgotten place, far from the noise that once threatened to destroy her. Why she still matters today. Two enormous world religions, followed by billions, disagree on almost everything about her son, yet agree completely on how much he deserves to be honored. That alone should tell you something. Strip away the theology, and what's left is a teenage girl who was terrified, who questioned the impossible before accepting it, who gave birth utterly alone, who faced public shame with nothing but conviction, and who became one of the most revered figures in human history. That's not only a religious story. That's one of the greatest untold human stories there is. Tell me in the comments which detail hit hardest, the isolated birth, the infant speaking in her defense, or the archaeology quietly proving her world was real. And if you want more videos uncovering the real history behind names we think we already know, subscribe now, because more untold history is coming.